Pamela, what adversity in your past did you need to overcome in order to create the wonderful book, The Woman Who Picked Up the Child, and the next book that you plan on writing as well?
When I was a little girl, starting at the age of about 3.5, 4 years old, I was sexually abused by two members of my family, a maternal grandfather and an uncle on the same side of my family. And it, it went over a period of 6 or 7 years that the abuse happened at different times. And my family had a family farm. I didn't live on it, but we went there quite frequently when I was a child, where some of my family members lived. My grandfather would take me to a shed and place me on a table and would insert different tools and objects into my vagina and my anus and would torture me in ways like that for periods of time, and then would take me off the table and dress me again, and I would carry on my way. When trauma like that happens, I think we dissociate rather quickly in order to survive. The abuse was so traumatic, and I was so tiny and vulnerable. Of course, things were told to me to keep me silent. By that time, my birth father had been killed in a car accident. So I knew what it meant if they said that I would never be able to see my mom again if I told on them. So I learned to keep it a secret, and I did that out of tremendous fear for my life and for those that I loved. My uncle would often be working in the barn, and as a little girl, I would go into the barn, and there were times and memories that I have of him having sex with cows and me having to watch him while he did that. After that, he would take me to a calf pen and sodomize me. He digitally raped me. There was a time when he also allowed a cow. He took me and held me up to a cow's mouth, and the cow licked my genitals. And those things happened repeatedly, more times than I can recount. And it was a very dark and horrible time in my life. What I learned was to be afraid and to not speak, and to be fake. I don't understand how my abuse wasn't noticed. As an adult, I know that my mom was a widow with 6 kids and depended on a lot of people for help in raising her kids after my father died. And this was in the 70s. So it was not a place where there were places that families could go for help as readily as there are in today's society. So in my silence, I became a very, very fearful child. I was extremely anxious, afraid of everything, afraid of my mom going away and dying and never seeing her again, which was a mixture of, losing a parent in my formative years, and also with the abuse starting at such a young age. I wanted to try things and experience things, but my fear paralyzed me. I didn't. I wanted to try things, and I wanted to have fun with other kids, but in the back of my mind, there was such a vigilance of being prepared for catastrophic things that when situations came my way, I would often just cower in fear. Nighttime was a terribly fearful time for me. I was the kid that was afraid of the dark, the kid that was afraid to try new stunts on her bike or anything that was that looked adventurous. My heart had a yearning to do it, but there was no way that I could. Somehow I repressed my memories, and I believe I did that to survive. In my teenage years, I was a part of a horrific accident that 4 of my high school friends were killed before my eyes. We were on a youth event, and it was a hayride accident, and a drunk driver drove straight for the first tractor, and had been jumping off, running from wagon to wagon, and 4 of the kids were hit, and they lost limbs and their lives, and we were shattered with pieces of flesh and their blood across our clothes and face. I went into even more of a depression to cope, whatever I could use to help me just kind of get through life. And for me, my friend at the age of 12 became self-harm. And I started cutting and beating myself with different, sometimes my hands, my own hands. Sometimes I took a meat tenderizer to my back one time. I had so much pain inside of me, too afraid to step out and get help, that the only way that I knew how to release some of what was going on inside of me was to self-harm. Self-harm has been part of my journey in my pain and in my story. When I became older and started dating, sometimes when I was with the person that I was with and we were starting to get intimate, I would have flashbacks or sensory flashbacks of a smell of a barn, for example, or just sheer terror would come across my entire being. And I was no longer able to continue on in that relationship or be with that person. And I didn't know why. When I was with a group of people that I trusted, when I was in theater and with my closest friends in my early 20s, I remember having enough courage to say, I think that I was abused as a child. That was as far as I ever got at that point in being able to talk about it. I think I needed to just say it and see what would happen, if the world would crumble, if the universe would stop, or perhaps the world fall off its axis or something. And nothing happened. My friends were very supportive, but I was terrified and couldn't go beyond that. I was raised in a Mennonite home. We're called Red Brick Mennonites, so not Amish and not Old Order, but modern Mennonites. However, we came from a very legalistic and dogmatic family with a lot of rules and expectations, and one of those expectations is that you don't talk about things that aren't proper to talk about. So I kept shoving it down, and when I couldn't handle that pressure of the pain, I just would cut, and I would do that to relieve some of the pressure inside of me, not even necessarily knowing at that time why I was, but knew that I was in incredible pain. I hid it all with my sense of humor. I was known as a kid and in my early 20s as an extrovert and life of the party, and knew how to play different roles that were expected of me. In my growing up, I'm fortunate that not everything was dark and awful, and I'm thankful for that. In that, I think it kept me going. I was suicidal more times than I can count, and by my 20s, I was on antidepressant medication, which helped, and I was able to move forward, and spoke with some very close women friends that were lay people that helped me look at some of my memories of sexual abuse. And because they weren't trained professionals, they did what they could do and did it phenomenally out of love and care for me. But it only went to a certain place. And I remember having physical ailments after some of those times with those women, where my legs were just aching with severe pain from remembering the trauma of my uncle spreading my legs apart, or memories of my grandfather inserting things into my body that should never be inserted in anyone. And I couldn't go further than that. I just stopped it. It was like I put a plug in that part of my life again and carried on. And I'd have wonderful times and could carry on. And then when pressure would be too much, I would cut to release some of that pressure. Knowing that, feeling incredibly shameful. I'm a child and youth worker / counselor. So I work with a lot of people, teenagers who self-harm, who are going through their own trauma. And I felt very unauthentic and ashamed for knowing that I was doing things that I was encouraging them not to do. But so understood their pain and agony for why they did it. In 2016, the last of my abusers passed away. And that was in May. And I started to have an enormous amount of flashbacks coming, hitting me at different times. So I don't know if you can think of times when you go into a grocery store and you open the cooler to where you can pick up eggs or milk or any of those coolers, and it smells like pasteurized milk, like a milk house. And I would just freeze in absolute terror from that sensory of being triggered back to the farm. I went on a field trip with a small group of kids, and we went to a stockyards, and we were walking on catwalks above all the stock, the animals, and it was literally an out of body experience in looking down and seeing some of the cattle there. And I just froze and couldn't hardly breathe, had a panic attack, needed to leave the situation. And a very good friend of mine was visiting me in June and said, do you think it's time that maybe you look at that piece that you think, that you were abused, that that you were, but to really look at those memories. And it really came to a life or death situation for me. I don't know how much longer I could have carried on. I was in my late 40s by that time. And I was stellar at being fake and knowing what to bring to the table when, for whom, but so depleted inside, so much pain and not knowing what to do with it. I reached out and sought some professional therapy and help to begin looking at my past and why certain things were happening, or why I was so afraid, and what really did happen to me. The memories came back in dreams and in flashbacks for that summer, especially prior to getting into therapy. I was broken. I had nothing left. I couldn't fake it. I needed help. And I knew that if I was going to continue on the road that I was continuing on, that someday a cut would be purposefully deep and deeper than any of my other cuts that would end my life here. And so through having courage to make that call and reach out for professional help, my life in the last 6 or 7 years has changed drastically. And for that, I am ever thankful.
Pamela, it's a powerful story that you tell. Thank you for sharing it with us. And what have you created now from your past adversity that has allowed you to have a positive influence on the world? And what will your legacy be from that?
When I had the courage to believe somewhere within myself that I could get help and that there was hope, I found a magnificent therapist and did tremendously difficult work. I'm not going to candy coat this, folks, and say to you that healing from sexual abuse is easy. It's hard, and it's a daily choice, just like any kind of what I believe a recovering addict of something may wake up every day and say, today I choose to stay away from ... For me, it's today I choose to know that I am worthy, I am lovable, I matter, and that I am deserving. In that therapy, I started journaling. I had so much emotion from looking back at my pain and my past and my abuse, and obviously different ways of functioning, like harming and self-harm and cutting and so on and so forth, that I had to somehow get it out onto paper. For me, I began a journal in 2017, maybe the end of 2016. I had been in therapy for a while. My therapist and I would discuss some things. I would go home for that week and write some stuff that we, discussed. Sometimes it was about shame. Sometimes it was about spirals. Sometimes it was about wishing that healing was a to-do list, that I could just check things off and be done and carry on. When one day my therapist suggested that maybe I could write a book with all my entries. And it planted a little seed in me. First of all, that someone believed that my writing was good enough to be a book. And secondly, that, wow, if I could just help one other survivor out there, if one other survivor would know that, some days you're just rocking it, and then the next day you feel like you're having a mental health day again, and you're doing everything within your power just to keep afloat because of triggers or flashbacks, and trying to avoid the spiral of, climbing 100 feet and then being knocked off on, down into the black hole again. But that's part of healing, and that's the whole process, is learning and grasping new strategies and new tools to help us to climb back out when we do spiral, because 7 years later, I'm still working on that. I'm still having days that are absolutely miserable. But the difference is I don't stay in that place of hopelessness or I can't do this for near as long as I did in the beginning of my healing journey. And I had tremendous pain, and I had low confidence. I had major self-esteem issues. I was very much afraid of everything, and to turn that around, to take my fear and become brave because of having the courage. And people say you can't, do things out of courage unless you are afraid. And that is true. So those things don't change, but the length of time does. So I wrote a book, and my book is published. My book is called The Woman Who Picked Up Her Child. My child was so far away, my inner child, from me, so hidden in fear and trauma and terror, that it took a lot of work for me to go and rescue her from those places that my uncle and my grandfather took me to, and what they did to little Pamela. The book is about hope. The book is about healing. The book is about my journey. And along the way, I did a lot of creative healing. And in that creativity, I made things to help symbolize different times of my healing. So I made a little leather pouch and put some essential oils in it. So if I would be triggered by something, I could smell a different smell that could bring me back to the present, for example. I built a bridge with a platform on it. The bridge is my symbol of healing. The platform is indication of my life now, and the things on that platform change and are continually being added to it. After publishing my book, I started to tap into the absolute rage and anger towards my abusers. So I created a tower of rage to symbolize all my anger. And there's different words on it that mean different things to me. The point is that I've done these things because they help me. But my ultimate hope is that it can ignite in someone else if they read that, oh, I could make a bridge, or maybe it will help someone decide to create something entirely different, but that's symbolic to them, to give them hope. I have a well of sadness because I was a very sad child, and it reminds me that I can go to the well. Sometimes I got to double dip, but I don't have to stay there. I put a screen door on the bridge from my platform to the actual bridge of healing to remind myself that that's my past. I can't change what happened to me, but I don't have to live there. I can look back, and it can, I can see through the blurry screen that it's all there. I could open it. I could choose to go back, but I choose to keep that screen door shut, knowing that, yep, that's part of who I am, but that's not where I have to be. And by healing and moving on, I believe that I am winning. I am taking back what my abusers took from me 40 plus years ago. And it's no longer theirs. And the shame is theirs. Shame on them for what they did to me, but not shame for little Pamela. Little Pamela needed to be picked up and loved and healed and nurtured and brought to a place where she can live and breathe and dance and know that her being has every right to be here. And that's what I want to give to other survivors. I want to help them with my book, to maybe give them the courage, to maybe comfort them in knowing that, oh my God, I'm not the only adult that cuts. oh my God, I'm not the only person who needs symbols in their life to represent different things and different milestones in their healing. Whatever it is, if I can bring someone to a place from near death, hopelessness, and despair to just a teeny bit of hope that they deserve something far more than what they've just been surviving, then to me, sharing my story and being vulnerable and authentic and real is worth it, because that is my dream. My dream is to let people know that, yeah, we were robbed, and what they took, we can't get back, but how we live can be ours, and we can take the control. And control isn't something that we're used to having. We either fight desperately to have it because we need it since we're survivors and lost control at such young ages. This kind of control is different in that I'm taking care of adult Pamela now. I've been so fortunate in getting great responses from different survivors and different people that have read my book. My book focuses on my healing. Yes, there is part of my story of abuse in the book, but the majority of my book is far more about the healing, the hard healing, and the feelings that can come when we are healing. And there are a rainbow of colors of healing, and sometimes red for rage, and sometimes green for healing, and sometimes we feel peacefully blue. Okay is okay, but being better than okay is amazing. And I just want to send that message of hope to let people know that when you take that step and hopefully, you know, get some help, some professional help, and share and speak to someone, maybe start by sharing it with one person and see what happens, just like I did, then your story can change. And it doesn't have to be dictated by what your abusers did, but rather how you came out of what the abusers did. So my book and my hope is that my book will reach many more people. I've been grateful for those that have read it and picked it up. I've spoken with some survivors, in fact, meeting some tomorrow who want to meet me and talk with me and get a signed copy of my book. And if I can do that, then it makes it worth it to me. I hope that I can have many speaking engagements to travel and help other survivors, knowing that we together can change the world and make it a better place than perhaps the guck that we lived with and through when we were abused. So that's my hope. From my book, The Woman Who Picked Up Her Child, is that people can have transformations deep within their souls so that they can take control that in the future of their life and live to the potential of each one of our beings.
Pamela, I think it's fantastic. You said something there about the peacefully blue. Is that every day doesn't have to be, a rock concert. It doesn't have to be a home run. It doesn't have to be a major success, but
Right.
the next day can be better, and the next day can be better. And that's such a powerful message for everyone that's involved. Again, I want to thank you so much for your testimony, you coming and talking with us and sharing your stories and your powerful journey through to where you are today and the successes for tomorrow, even through those days that are a little bit peacefully blue.
Yeah. Thank you very much.